All right, everybody, so welcome to our overview for Lab 2. So the format's a little bit different here. I want to show you my entire desktop here so that I'm able to show you some of the more interesting features of SPSS. It's a little bit different from any software you might have used before, like Excel. So just a reminder, what is SPSS? We've talked about it a little bit up until this point. SPSS is a statistical software. It's built to manage data. So we're going to use it and introduce ourselves to it by doing what we've been doing in class, which is organizing and displaying data. We're going to be inputting data into SPSS and creating histograms using SPSS. So the goal of this lab is to be comfortable with the software, with basic data entry into it, and with, creating these histograms. So, of course, with all of these labs, your version of SPSS might look a little bit different from mine. If you're thinking, how do I get access to SPSS? That is available through the link. I have a video about it. It's posted in the module section and in the announcements. So I'll be showing you here on my personal computer, so it might be a little bit different than yours, but of course, just reach out with any questions if you have them. So the example here that we'll be working with is looking at differences in gender to complete a puzzle, how many minutes to complete an abstract puzzle. So we're going to open the program first, so I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like. Again, it might be a little bit different than yours, and that's because, and other programs in general, just because we have multiple screens with SPSS. So I'm going to show you. But first we'll open a new data set. Okay, so if we open it up, it'll give us a screen like this where we have some options. It's asking me if I want to open a recent file here because I do have recent files, but you probably don't. But in the future, you might see this. But right now, we just need a new data set. So go ahead and click New Data Set. It'll open and it'll give us a few things. All right, so it's going to data set. That looks a little bit like Excel, right? So we have cells here, but it is different. So we have this window, which we call an output window. An output window. Okay, so anything that we ask SPSS to do, it's going to put it in this window, the output. So we'll see that momentarily, but we also need to be aware of that these files save separately from each other. So a data view versus variable view. Okay, so this is the data set one, and this is the output. The variable view is the output one. Okay, so you want to make sure you save the data set, and you do so by going to File, Save. Right, I can't save because there's nothing in here, but you would save it to somewhere on your computer, on your device. And then you'd be able to access it later. Likewise, for the output, if you want to save your output, you need to save this separately. It's a different file. And I detail that in the instructions here. So we have it here. There's different file extensions. We have SAV and SPV files. Just be sure you're mindful of that. You don't want to lose your work, and it is other softwares that you do have to save the different file types separately. So let's just talk about what's going on here in SPSS. What does it do? Well, first we have a data set, and it has a couple of features. It has features that are similar to it. We have columns of data and rows of data. The columns here are variables that we can give specific characteristics. That's what we will start out doing here. We have tabs here as well with different functions. And then we have a number of abilities here. We're going to be using this to accompany pretty much every statistical test we run in this course. So you can see how powerful these types of software really are. So let's go ahead and take a look. Right, this is showing you the output. There are tabs on the output as well as the output window outlined in yellow here. That's where your outputs are going to go if you ask SPSS to do anything. If you ask it to say calculate a mean, it's going to spit it out over in the output view. So something else that differentiates SPSS from, say, Excel is that we have a specific view to edit our variables. So the first thing that you do in this lab assignment is go to the variable view. It's going to take you to a different screen. So I have this screenshot here, the details, some of what's going on here. So let's go ahead and go over there on SPSS. So again, my screen is a little different than yours, but variable view is still down here at the bottom. If we click on variable view, notice this changes. This is not the same as the screen we were just on. We now have a list of other information here that we can use. So if we look at the instructions, the first thing we want to include in our variables is a variable for gender. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here, and when I type in gender, it gives it a list of characteristics. So we're going to get back to this and edit these in a minute, but this is just to note that variable view is different from data view. All right, if I put something in over in data view, you can see that I have a column for gender. It's not going to do the same autofill. All right, variable view is separate. It's to set up the data that SPSS expects to receive. So let's go back to our instructions here and take a look. We're going to make a couple of changes to the data here. Remember our data types. We have nominal, ordinal, and then scale data. Here's our interval ratio data. So SPSS wants to know what type of data you have. Are we working with number line data or categories? So we're also going to include minutes here, and we're going to include both of those variable types. So let me hop over here and put in minutes. So gender, what is gender in terms of type of data? It's a category, right? So we would click nominal here because that's category, and then minutes is time is a scale, so that's what we would include over here. And then we hop back over. You can see that we have labels that also include the type of data that we are going to put into SPSS. So this is the basic kind of mechanism here. There are other things we can and will change in the future. So let's pop up over here and see what else we need to do. Again, there are a lot more detailed instructions here. These videos are just meant to be an overview for you, and so you can, see me working with it in case you get a little bit hung up. So let's go ahead to the next here. If you click back into data view as we just did, you can see that we have these now labeled. Let's go back to variable view and do a couple of things. The first is let's go back to variable view. It's saying that gender is a numeric variable. I mean, it's most certainly not, right? That's what nominal variables are. They're variables that cannot be described with numbers. So we're going to change it to a different variable type. We're going to call it a string variable, right? A string variable, that's what these instructions detail here. And now we're going to do a process called coding. Coding our data. We're going to do a lot of data coding in the course. And what is data coding? Let me go ahead and hop back over here. It's when we assign values to our different categories or labels. So I'll show you what we're doing here. What we're doing is saying, hey, instead of gender, what's putting in as a word, right, like male or female, we're going to tell SPSS to treat it as numbers. 0, all right, so 0 is equal to male and 1 is equal to female. Could be the other way around, it doesn't matter, but that's what we're doing in this exercise. So we briefly touched on coding in a prior lecture. What coding does is it simplifies data without losing meaning. So if we have a binary variable like gender in this case we're only measuring male and female participants, we can code very simply by writing zeros and ones. We're reducing it down to the simplest language possible to avoid confusion and to express that there are only 2 categories for this particular variable. So that's what we're doing here. Again, not important in this particular lab, but we're just getting used to the basic features, okay, of SPSS. So then just remember, this does not mean that one of these has more value than the other. We're just organizing the data. So we have that here, and then we want to input our data. Okay, so what I have here is a screenshot from Excel that has all of our data that we're going to be using. So males and females, and then how many minutes it took them to solve the puzzle. So we're going to take and input all of this data into SPSS. So this is some practice with data entry. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want to include all 30 data points here. So I'm going to hop back over into my data view, and let's go ahead and put some of this in. So one thing, right, we have codes now. So we could input gender as just zeros and ones. We would want to check out our codes here we have 0 for male and 1 for female. So you notice here that it's text and words, but the idea here is that SPSS will recognize either words or numbers. SPSS is better at recognizing numeric values. That's why we give the numeric values, to know the differences between categories. So we could start to put this in either way. We could use our codes, we could use the text, the words, because we have already coded it, so I'm not going to put all of this in, but I'll go ahead and put a few of them in. Something else very important to note here is that you need to make sure that everything is exactly the same. The computer can't predict what you want, can't figure out what you want. It's not AI yet. So if you put in something like female with a lowercase f, it's going to think that is something totally different than female with a capital F, which is why numbers is much easier. Computers take everything literally. So just be careful when you're putting this stuff in. That's why the zeros and ones are also nice. It saves you a little bit of time and error and fixing errors. And then we would put in the minutes for each individual here. So I'm not going to put in all the data just for time's sake, so that I can show you a bit more of what we need to do here. But this is what you would do all the way down to 30, right? Include all the scores that are given here. So what we're going to do now is make some histograms. We want to make 3 histograms total. And since we have male data and female data, what we want to do is have 2 separate histograms for males and females. And then we want to have 1 histogram that combines both male and female data. So mine is not going to look how yours should look because I don't have all the data in here. I'm just doing a few of them. But let me go ahead and show you the steps that we need to do in order to make this work. So the first thing we need to do is go to the Data tab. The Data tab, so see, mine are up here because I'm on a Mac. If you're on a Windows, it'll be in the SPSS window itself. But we want to go to Data and we want to split file. And let me move this out of the way. We want to go to split file and we want to, okay, by gender. So what we're saying here is we want to organize the groups, and the group we want to organize by is gender. So we're going to press OK. It hops us over to the output window because the output window tells us we just did. It says, okay, we sorted cases by gender. We split the file separate by gender. So we know that it worked. So let's hop over to the instructions again. Split file, there we have it. And now we want to make our histograms, okay, separate histograms. So we're going to go to the Analyze tab and select Descriptive Statistics. Remember, histograms are descriptive statistics, and then frequencies. So let's go ahead. We're going to go to Analyze Descriptive Statistics and Frequencies. And it's going to ask us what we want to do. So we want to bring minutes over here. We're splitting by gender, and then we want to look at the variable minutes. So we're treating gender as the independent variable and minutes as the dependent variable. You want to check display frequency tables. That's what we want, right? We're practicing what we've been doing in class, and then we'll go to charts, and we'll go to histograms. You can select this if you want to show me the normal curve on the histogram, so you can compare how normal your distribution might be. And then we also want to go to, let me scroll down here, to format here. We want to make sure that the output is organized by variables. So let's go ahead and press continue. And once these changes are made, we can press OK. So let's take a look at what we have here. And what we have now is this is showing us for the female category all, right, how many are in this group? We have 5. You will have more than that because you'll have all 30 data points in. But what's this table here shows you is how much data you have in that group. So here we have a frequency table of how many minutes it took each individual to solve the puzzle. All right, with the frequencies. So notice that this looks just like the frequency tables we've been making in class. And then a histogram, right? A very sparse one because I don't have all the data in here. But you will have all the data in here. I mean, you'll have a nice full histogram where you can take a look at the distribution of the data. And then we have the same thing for the male gender again. Of course, this looks like a mess, right? Because all the data is not in here, but you will have all the data in here. And this is what you should expect. 2 nice full histograms with 2 frequency tables. All right, so then if we hop back to the instructions over here, we did this. It's showing us what our output will look like here. Here is the example of the full output, what we would expect. And then we have two histograms. All right, two histograms. So now we want to do a combined histogram where we do not create groups. So we're going to go back to that split file setting and say not to make groups. So let's go ahead and do that. If we hop back over to the data set, we do a data split file and we say, hey, instead of organizing put by groups, analyze all cases, right? And you can also click reset here. And then, okay, so now the output is telling us that the cell is off. And then our next step would be to just repeat how we created the last histogram. We want to go to analyze descriptive statistics and frequencies, and then we want to press OK. We should already be set up from the last time, so let's go ahead and give that a try. Analyze descriptive statistics and frequencies, and here we are now. Since it's not split by group, if we press OK, we have a combined histogram. Notice that this is not separated by male and females, and then this will include all of the data from all 30 participants. All right. Then the last piece of this lab is that you need to save the SPV file. The SPV file, okay, is the output, this screen here. So if you did a file and a save, as you should see that this file is a .spv, all right, SPV, not SAV. So you go ahead and save this as your last name, and then this is lab 2. Right, so you would save it like this, and you would pull it up to submit on Canvas. Remember that if you're using, Jamovi or whatever, make sure that you're saving the output. Yeah, and if you have any questions about that, just let me know. If you have questions about it, go ahead and let me know. But yeah, that concludes lab 2. All right, good luck.